Good afternoon. My name is Fiona Stubbs. I'm the Careers Manager for the College of Medical, Veterinary and Life Sciences here at the University of Glasgow. I'd like to welcome our panellists. Before we do that, I'd just like to say in true typical style, just a few housekeeping points. This is a webinar, so your cameras and microphones have been turned off. If you could just keep them off, that would be great. While we are talking to our panelists, if you've got some questions, then please put them in the Q&A facility that you'll find if you wiggle the mouse rather than the chat. So please put any questions in the Q&A facility rather than the chat, and ask, as I said, the questions as we're going along, as they occur to you, and then we'll address them at the end of the questions that Dimitar and I will answer. The webinar is being recorded, and you'll be able to access it via the YouTube channel for the Career Service in a few weeks when we've had time to sort of edit it and sort it out. I think that's it. It's just to say we are here in the first day of the two-day careers fair for science students. Tomorrow, we have got a careers fair in the Wolfson Medical Building, just some science companies that you can talk to face to face. But today we've had a great lineup of panels, and this is our 6 out of 7. The next one is the psychology panel. So we are super lucky to welcome 4 panelists today. And alongside Dimitar, I'm going to be picking their brains and letting them share their wisdoms. What else have I got to say? I think that's all. So I will start with the questions and ask them if you could remind us of your job title, where you work, and sort of typical things you might do in your job. So your job title, where you work, and a few things you might do in your job. So can I start with Paula, please?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, great. Thanks, Paula.
Hi. Yeah, so my job is I work as a psychological wellbeing practitioner for NHS 24 within the mental health hub. My role just involves assessing patients who contact our service via the telephone, who are having a mental health crisis or just a mental health concern, wellbeing concern. And as a PWP, we conduct mental health assessments and risk assessments, and basically triage patients based on the outcome of the assessment. Sometimes that can just be signposting them back to their GPs. Other times that can be arranging some contact from, if it's out of hours, we would maybe have to organise CPN, psychiatry to contact the patient depending on the risk, and other times that could be escalating to maybe contacting ambulances or police. Also, having to sort of raise public protection issues. So it depends. Every single call it can be so different. So it really depends on the situation. But yeah, there's quite a lot of things that the role involves. But we've got the support from like senior charge nurses and mental health nurses that kind of guide us on the more like serious and risky situations. So yeah, that's kind of.
And I also know, Paula, that you are on night shift, so thank you very much for spending your sleep time with us today.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Clement. What's your job title and where do you work, and sort of a few things that you do in the day?
Thank you. Hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
So I'm Dr. Clement Komu. I'm a senior medical officer working with the Ministry of Health, Kenya. So having done an undergrad in medicine and surgery and master's in global mental health, my work basically oscillated between clinical work as a GP as well as mental health advocacy. So in that, the second one there, the advocacy, we are drafting currently some systems to try and champion for increased or accelerated access to rural setting in our county. So basically my work is clinical work, and the other time I'm just doing a bit of advocacy and drafting mental health systems. Yeah.
Thank you. Jack, the same question to you, please.
I am an assistant clinical psychologist in Esteem, so that's a service for people experiencing their first episode of psychosis, based in Gart Naval Hospital, but we work across, I mean, the whole service works across all of Glasgow, but I work across East and West. And that's quite broad in terms of what it can involve, like supporting with assessment for psychosis, helping with research, or like delivering interventions, sort of CPT based stuff, or yeah, a bit of everything really, whatever they need me to do. Sorry.
Cool. Cormac, the same question to you with your job title and where you work and sort of few things that you do.
Hi everyone. So yeah, I work as an assistant psychologist in child and adolescent mental health services, so CAMS. So my role is kind of split between two different services within CAMS. So one part of my role is in the early intervention team. So it's helping assisting kind of a clinical psychologist to deliver training for kind of third sector and tier 2 services on CBT-based interventions like LAM, which is anxiety management and kind of risk management and brief behavior and things like that. So then those people go on to be coached by the clinical psychologist to perform those kind of interventions in schools and kind of community sectors and things like that. So then along with that, I work in the group service, which also provides kind of CBT informed interventions to families and young people. So I'm kind of forward facing in terms of delivering those interventions, as well as assisting with kind of systematic reviews and kind of reviews and analysis of how the interventions are going, things like that. So yeah, it's quite a varied role.
Yeah. Great, thank you all. Dimitar, do you want to ask the next question?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dimitar, and I'm a lecturer in the Global Mental Health MSc program at the University of Glasgow, and I'm also an alumnus of this very same program. So it's great to be here and to speak to our panelists. Thank you again for your time. So my first question to the panelists is about your current job, and please tell us, what do you find most challenging and most rewarding about your current roles, just to give our attendees a bit more insight into the nature of your work. Maybe if we can start with Paula.
Yeah, so my role, yeah, it does have its challenges. Like I said, the calls vary in nature, and we do have quite high risk patients that call our service. So that can be quite challenging. You're under pressure. You're trying to ensure that this person's safe. Sometimes people can be outside in sort of places where they're wanting to end their life, and so it's about keeping calm through all of that. But you at that point you do feel like you've got kind of someone's life in your hands. So that can be quite challenging, yeah. But the good thing is, it's a very supportive role. We've always got like senior colleagues around us supporting us, and after every shift we all have a debrief, 30-minute, 45-minute debrief to talk about any sort of challenging calls or emotional calls. Some calls might not be so risky, but they can be personal to you if if you maybe sort of experience something similar yourself. So that can be quite challenging. What I do love though is, a call where you do feel like you have really helped a person. Sometimes that's all it takes is a bit of reassurance, and to let them know, the support that is out there for them. And when they do sort of feel, that the call has helped, I suppose that's the best part about the job, when you feel like you have really made a difference. So, yeah.
Thank you, Paula. And Jack, what about you? What do you find most challenging and rewarding about your job now?
What do I? Well, I think the most challenging part is probably the fact that it can be quite unpredictable. You can sort of, plan to do so much in terms of an intervention or assessment, or you can sort of, orchestrate your day and so many different people to come to support someone, and just through circumstance. When you're working with really vulnerable people who are facing poverty, discrimination, often in the asylum system, it's really difficult to be able to actually feel like you're you're sticking to your plan and the treatment plan, and you're actually making progress. But at the same time, whilst that's probably the most challenging, it's quite rewarding when you can see, especially sort of being an early intervention service and working with people at their first episode, you can get people at a point where they might have just, continued to stay in the system and sort of declined over time. So actually there's quite a lot of capacity to see people flourish a bit actually, and find value, I suppose, from a really, difficult experience. Actually, they may end up having more beneficial experiences than if they never had psychosis in the first place. So probably, yeah.
Thank you, Jack. Really, really useful insights into your role. And Clement, what about you?
Let me start with the positive parts. I love my work because it allows me to offer like holistic healthcare to my patients, where I can take care of their physical, mental, as well as, if possible, social well-being. Unfortunately, and I say this is a frustration of the same, is where, if you notice, most of the patients are never treated holistically. Most of the times we only dwell on the physical pain, and mental state and social well-being, really we don't address this. And so we end up with individuals in the society they don't have physical pain, but they still have distress, either mental distress or social distress. So that's quite frustrating to me, knowing that, yes, I have alleviated the physical pain, but still they are still undergoing some distresses at their, social or mental level. So, yeah.
Thank you, Clement. And Cormac, what about yourself?
Yeah, I suppose for me, like going through university and stuff, I was always really interested in working with children and young people, and being able to do that in a role like I'm in now is really great. I think whenever you're able to make a difference in the child's life, or a family's life, especially with the current situation at the minute with the wait list and everything like that, there's a sense in which there's such a relief around getting that kind of care. And I suppose there's a pressure in that as well. I suppose you feel like you are responsible, and there's kind of a taxing kind of mental capacity for that as well, but you're also so well supported and well protected in the role. And I think you have a great team, like working in a big multidisciplinary team, and everyone's just really there for you and supports you. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very interesting insights, everyone. So I would like to ask my next question to the panelists, which is about thinking back to your first job after graduation. How did the master's program provide a good platform for you to take on those new responsibilities and those new roles? Maybe we can start with Paul again.
Hi. So my first job from coming out of graduation was I was a support worker for SAMH, Scottish Association for Mental Health, and yeah, the master's program absolutely gave me quite good insight going into that role in terms of different mental health conditions, and like the role of culture within mental health, and work because I was working with people from like different cultures and different diagnoses. So yeah, I think going into any role, the masters is great to have behind you, because you do touch on so many different aspects of mental health, and like I said, culture and everything, which is really important. So yeah, I think the masters has been great for going into both of the roles that I've ended up in since graduating. So yeah,
Thank you, Paula. And Clement, what about yourself? What did you take from the master's program into your continuing role as a GP now? And also, I'm aware you had a temporary job in the UK quite recently as well.
Yeah, so thank you. I was fortunate enough to do a part-time job when I was still undergoing my master's studies, and I believe the soft skills that I learned in the part-time job, as well as my academics, have really enabled me to have enough skills to at least start my new job. As much as it's a very new job, I started this like 2 weeks ago, my new role, but I feel I'm quite well equipped in terms of advocacy in mental health, and not only mental health. These are global it was a global picture. So I'm not approaching this only at a local level, but I have a global picture in terms of the social aspect, the cultural aspect, and so on. So when it comes to advocacy for mental health at my current new role that they have added on my duties, I feel like I have the skill sets, but again, I think time will tell on how that will roll out in terms of implementing, because some of them are quite, we are borrowing a lot from maybe the Western world or so, but I think time will tell on how that will work out. But yeah, I'm really well equipped with that in terms of knowledge and skills. Yeah.
That's really great to hear, Clement. Thank you. And Jack, what about yourself? Looking back to your first job post-graduation.
Yeah, similar to Paula, I was a support worker but for people with learning disabilities. And whilst there wasn't much in terms of exposure to kind of cross-cultural attitudes, there was, I think, what the MSc had instilled was like this sense of, I suppose, questioning what is well-being, what is recovery. I guess it poses a lot of questions in that regard about, what is a valuable life, what is meaningful to an individual. And I think going into any service, but particularly I found there where, people's understanding of their experiences there's a lot of variation in that. I think just being able to go in with a critical awareness and walking into a setting not with the kind of preconceived ideas of what someone's level should be or what recovery or well-being would be to the people you're working with. Yeah, I'd say probably that.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. I think you really nicely illustrate that what I think is really valuable in university's degrees, beyond giving us answers to the questions, is really teaching us how to ask different questions depending on the context in which we find ourselves in. So I think really nicely illustrated this. And Cormac, can I ask you the same question about your first job post-graduation?
Yeah, so I started in this role just a month really after I graduated from the master's. So I think for me, I agree with Jack. Like I think when you're working with a population base that's incredibly diverse and with people with lots of different backgrounds, you have to kind of take those things into consideration. I think the masters give a good in-depth knowledge of kind of what the surrounding mental health institutes are like around the world and how maybe different cultures are adapted to that. So I think that's vitally important when I go to my work and would be able to understand those things. And also a big part of the role is kind of evaluating interventions and understanding kind of how the service is working and operating and the policies around that. And I think the Masters gives a great understanding of that as well. So that's something I've definitely taken into the role when it comes to kind of service evaluation and kind of statistical analysis as well, being able to fully understand the depth of how these interventions work for a whole wide-scale population.
Yeah, thank you, Cormac. And yeah, I think you usefully highlight the role of technical skills as well as more of a theoretical interpersonal skills. Thank you. Fiona?
Yes, I think you just have 4 great recommendations for your Masters, Dimitar, that are worth their weight in gold. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. So my question is in UK universities, there's always quite a strong emphasis on students either doing part-time jobs or volunteering or taking part in extracurricular activities on top of their studies. I wonder if you did any of these sort of things while you were an undergraduate, and did you feel that they aided you in your future career? I'll start with Paul again in true style. So what did you get up to in terms of extracurricular alongside your studies?
Yeah, throughout the master's programme, I was working part-time as a dementia care worker. I've been doing that for a couple of years beforehand as well. Just stayed on part-time while I was doing the masters, and absolutely, it's helped. But I would say that the masters kind of helped me be a better care worker while I was in that position, because we did do a good couple of weeks on dementia as well, and so I felt like it actually helped me in my current role, which is good. And the role also helped me in my studies. I did my dissertation on psychological therapies for people with dementia, so they both of them, I would say, really helped me in both roles.
Did you get,
Yeah.
can I just ask, was that a volunteer role or did you get paid for it?
No, that was a paid position. So I was full time in that position before I started the masters, and just dropped down to part time.
Yeah.
When I started on the program. So yeah, and the uni did have a couple of like modules as well, like Mind Your Mate. It's like a kind of suicide awareness and prevention module that you can get involved in. I done that as well. I don't know if anybody else done that when they were on the course, but that was really good. So yeah, I just kind of got involved as much as I could. So yeah, so
Cool. Thank you. Cormac?
So yeah, I suppose throughout my undergrad, I was fortunate enough to have some opportunities to go abroad to do some volunteering as well. So I worked in Sri Lanka for a while as a mental health worker for like 6 weeks, just living out there, which was an amazing experience. And I also worked in America as a kind of camp counselor as well. So I think that was kind of inspired me to also do the masters as well. I felt like I kind of gained a bit of knowledge around mental health workings in other countries. So I think that knowledge and that interest kind of carried forward into my masters, which I'm very thankful for. I also kind of took part in like the Nightline service within university. So I was able to work kind of the nightly services, just kind of taking calls from people that might have been struggling with anything, either at university or the kind of the mental health. And then I worked as a research assistant as well, on a project called Research Voices, which was through the Scottish Learning Disability Observatory. So it was kind of a way in which people with learning disabilities to kind of become empowered through their ability to get involved in policy decisions that were kind of affecting them in terms of health inequalities and things like that. So I think I was fortunate to get quite a lot of opportunities in and around my time at university. And I would encourage everyone to kind of just to take every opportunity they get, because it's really valuable.
Well, I think you were fortunate, but you also were proactive in reaching out for them. Can I ask, was it Camp America that you worked for, or BUNAC, or?
It was, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
it was, yeah.
Cool. Clement, can I ask you that question?
Yes, please. I have engaged in several volunteering activities, especially when I was just before I enrolled in this the Masters Global Mental Health, and the organization that I was working with is called Elimisha Jamii. In Swahili, translates to educating the community or the masses. And our main focus was mostly the non-communicable diseases, things like diabetes, hypertension, mental health, and so on. And I came to realization that more or less the other conditions were well funded by most of the organization, maybe faith-based, or there was a time even the government of Sweden really gave us like strips, diabetes strips and so on, the machines and so on, to go and do mass screening of hypertension and diabetes. But unfortunately for mental health, they have not been that much of emphasis. And I think that's what triggered me to enroll in global mental health, as I felt is an area that had been neglected in our region. And I came to realize it's not just our region, because our class was quite diverse, having people from Asia, even Americas. And I realized they share almost the same story. Like mental health is an area that have not gotten the same attention as any other condition. So I felt this is a career path that I need to do. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. And finally, Jack.
Yeah, throughout undergrad, I've been involved as a research assistant in some research projects, which was great. I guess for consolidating, it's always a bit easier when you can apply the theory in practice. It doesn't seem as, out there and annoying when you can actually do it. And I started consistently volunteered running groups for kids with learning disabilities throughout that period, and then whilst doing the masters, and then just other random jobs. But it was a volunteer at the Scottish Refugee Council, doing casework stuff, which was I think partly influenced by the fact that joining the masters I didn't know so much about it. But then also, as Paula had said, is a really good way to consolidate, I guess, what the things you were learning in practice in the classroom environment. So yeah.
Cool. All great sort of top tips in terms of volunteering and getting those extra skills outside of the classroom. And this next question sort of feeds off the answers that you've given to me. And it's just, have you got any top tips to help students make themselves sort of more marketable in your sector when they're looking for jobs? So any sort of top tips or valuable advice that you might give students in order for them to sort of stand out, I suppose, within the application process? So I'm going to ask Cormac the first time this time.
I suppose it's hard because I think especially with psychology at undergrad, there's a huge amount of pressure to get all these kind of extracurricular activities because there's such a competitive job market. And I think it's also hard because in order to have those the time and the kind of finances around that, it's not really a fair ball game for everyone. So I think my main kind of advice would be to not feel like what your experience is, it's not enough. I feel like there's a sense of being reflective around what you've actually done, because I feel like in a lot of cases people have done a lot more and experienced a lot more than they maybe realize, and you learn so much, and every skill is transferable in these kind of jobs. So I think being able to pick and choose, kind of try and get an experience around maybe research, kind of in out in the field doing a job and things like that. So I think being able to get a wide berth on what your experience is, but not undervaluing what you've also done as well, and being reflective of what you've done as well is also equally important.
Yeah. And can I just add, one of the other panels that we've been on today did say that, you know, everybody's different. Some people have other commitments, maybe caring responsibilities, and it could be that you volunteer once in a month. It doesn't have to be so you know, consuming of your weekly time. So I think that's worthy of note. You can get experience sporadically and when a time that suits your life. But yes, thank you, Cormac. That's a really good point. Paula, can I ask you, please?
Yeah, just definitely echoing what Cormac said there. It can be challenging, like, to try and, you know, you do, it is a competitive kind of field, but just, you know, look out. Like I said, I got involved in some like free sort of short modules that the university were running that were related to mental health and global mental health. So I got involved with them. You're just keeping an eye out on things you can get involved in that's going to give you some experience and build your knowledge and the field that you're kind of wanting to get into. So yeah, but like, yeah, I know it can be difficult and, you know, financially and other responsibilities. So yeah, don't put too much pressure on yourself, because, you know, it's hard, but yeah, just try and look out for things that are suitable for you and that you can get that wee extra bit of knowledge and skills from.
Okay. And Jack, how do you think, any top tips on making students more marketable in a sort of more competitive environment?
Yeah, well, I would definitely echo, first of all, what Cormac and Paula had said, that you do come out of uni a bit like, oh my God, I thought I would have everything by now. And I think that's just normal. So I think well, firstly, I'd say being pretty reflective. I think especially when, you know, you're a bit under pressure, you feel quite, you know, I was certainly prone to just saying what I felt people wanted to hear, as opposed to actually reflecting on your own experiences, and not just in work and volunteering, but your personal life and things like that. And, you know, really bringing that together and figuring out what's motivating you to do what you're doing or what you're trying to do, but also, I suppose, where your weaknesses are a bit, because, and I guess in that it's reflecting on sort of maybe on your life and your experiences and your weaknesses, but also accepting that, you know, your first job out of uni or the master's might not exactly be the dream job, but it's about, I guess, establishing those, like, I love doing support work, but it wasn't necessarily where I wanted to be at that point. And I think accepting that you might have to do a job that wasn't necessarily your dream job, because it's going to give you sort of those ground floor skills and challenging experiences to talk about, I would say. But also, I guess, any experience, people love like, you know, employers seemingly just love anything where you're able to actually speak to sort of social group and culture and the importance of that. So I think any experience where you can reflect on that or be exposed to kind of, you know, the impact that can have, I think it's quite important. So in that thicket, I'm sure there might be something you can take, but
That's all good. That's all good. And thank you very much, Jack. And lastly, Clement, do you have any ideas on how students might make themselves more marketable when they're applying for a job?
Thank you. I think most of the things have been mentioned. Just to add just one bit is to say, For you to be marketable, you need to know the market. And for you to know the market, you need to be in the market. So basically, either you volunteer or you do part-time job, because this gives you the soft skills that you need, things like communication skills, you need the problem-solving skills, you need the time management skills, you need to learn around leadership and so on. So by you being in that environment, it gives you a chance to at least know what awaits you in your career. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's over to you. Thank you, Clement. It's over to you, Dimitar, to ask the sort of last question.
Yes, and most of our panelists here today are involved in service delivery roles, particularly in clinical settings, of course, with some elements of research and advocacy that we have heard about. But I'd like to pose a question to our panelists about what other roles are open to global mental health graduates who don't wish to work don't wish to do clinical work or even service delivery work. This is just an open question for anyone if anyone wishes to share their thoughts on that.
I suppose for me, a big component of the master's is kind of policy implementation. So I suppose if you not necessarily want a kind of forward-facing, client-facing role, there's a lot of kind of behind the scenes kind of work that goes into kind of how mental health and kind of provisions are provided. So I suppose there's certainly something to be said about the benefits of doing the master's if that's what you're interested in, because I think you gain so much knowledge around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Policy is a very big sector, global mental health arena. Yep. Shall we hear from the others about maybe non-clinical jobs that you can think of that graduates might pursue?
Yeah, I agree with Cormac that other people in my cohort had gone into sort of civil service or policy roles, different roles within charity organizations, research that wasn't necessarily related to mental health work. Yes, I think the sort of the baseline skills and the knowledge and understanding that can sort of be applied. And actually, from my experience, I think, well, hearing what they've spoken about, actually, it's quite attractive to different employers having that, experience. You don't necessarily need to be working in anything clinical.
Yep. Clement, Paula, do you have any thoughts on variation in job roles and sectors?
Sorry, on you go, Clement.
Clement,
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like tutoring, there's a lot of teaching opportunities in the same field. Taking into account mental health has started taking a lot of interest in many people. So most of the institutions have started maybe such courses. So you can at least get a job in the same, it's not in the clinical work. Also, there's some organizations like the international agency, such as UNHCR, where they at least try to support refugees and so on. It's not so much clinical because it's a fieldwork kind of thing. So they employ people who want to go to the field and support such people who have been affected by conflict and so on. So yeah, that can be a good area to go to.
Thank you, Clement. And Paula?
Yeah, no, I'm just kind of the same, really. I've heard a lot of people going into like research and sort of policy work and things like that as well. So yeah, it's not it's not just all about service delivery. It's it's just there's a lot out there. It's a huge field. So
yeah.
Certainly, and there is so much variation even within the service delivery role in terms of clinical settings, but also, as Clement mentioned, community settings as well, and the different types of support that can be psychosocial as well as clinical.
Thank you. A quick question just from me before we go to a few Q&A, a few questions. Where did you get your job? Because a lot of students will say, where did you get your job? Whether that's website, via networking, or whether it's converted from any volunteering experience. And do you have any top tips on where students can find jobs in this area of global mental health? Has anyone got any ideas? So can we start with you, Paula? Where did you get your fab nighttime job
It's not always night shift.
I know.
It's not all bad. I'm joking. So yeah, well, I can, I've always kind of wanted to be involved in service delivery, and the NHS is kind of where I've always kind of seen myself gravitating towards. So I was just always keeping an eye on the NHS website, searching for mental health jobs, psychology jobs, things like that, and just always just kind of keeping an eye on that. Just other like online websites as well, like Indeed and things. Always you can have jobs, but my main one is kind of the NHS jobs website. That's where I seem.
Did you set alerts for yourself, or were you just very observant?
Very observant, but I would advise to set alerts.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Paula. Cormac, how did you get your job, and any top tips on getting jobs in the area?
Yeah, so I suppose I used the NHS jobs website, specifically the Scotland one, just apply for assistant roles. And I think, I think alerts are probably a good way to go, because the one that I applied for closed within a day, because I think they got over 100 applicants. I think that's the kind of the field that we've kind of gone into, because I think it's just so competitive, and it can be demoralizing. But I think it's important to know that there's quite a lot of other roles now being introduced, the kind of for graduates. Like in Scotland, there's now the new EPP, like enhanced psychological practitioner role. And there's other kind of ventures, like this new kind of CAP role, which is the clinical associate in applied psychology, which is maybe it's just a step above an assistant, but there's still other ventures in which you can kind of go towards. So I think keeping a constant lookout. I think LinkedIn's also a good option, and just the NHS jobs, and just kind of and also there's also looking at kind of third sector and charity jobs as well, because there's a huge breadth of kind of work in mental health. It's and kind of clinical facing roles that are within that sector, but I think a lot of people maybe don't associate directly with kind of the NHS kind of work, but they work very closely as well. So there's definitely options out there. Just try and hang in there.
Yeah, and I don't know if Clement and Jack have anything to add to those top tips.
Briefly, so for my part-time job that I was doing in Glasgow, what I did, I went to a job fair. It was in one of the stadiums, I think Hamptons. I can't remember the specific name of the stadium, but what I did, I carried my CV, and for each and every station that I went that I felt they had a job I wanted, I presented it as an interview. Like, I gave my all. So after that, I was offered 3 different jobs, and all they wanted was reference from my supervisor. And thank you, Dr. Dimitar, because he was the one who recommended me to one of the jobs. I didn't even go for interview. I simply got the job direct after going for the job fair. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Jack, anything to add to that? Does anyone know any search agencies or job agencies that maybe you could get for some sort of temping job or even a full-time job? Anyone heard of any?
No,
maybe
not used
you could just. Sorry, go on, Jack.
No, sorry, I'm useless in that regard, and not as employable as Clement, I think. Again, NHS Scotland, but most of my work was so after volunteering, I worked at the Refugee Council for about 1.5 years in destitution. So, and I think I don't underestimate the value of nepotism. I think if you volunteer somewhere, you'll have more to speak about, but also it's, a foot in the door. And I think that's the same in the NHS, that if you're like a support, I know there's a question about being a support worker. I don't think you just have to be a support worker, but if you were, for example, being in the specific service that you were interested in working in, you'd be there for any opportunity. So nepotism and get your face out there, I suppose.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the questions, and I think they have been answered. Clara asked, how does a degree in life sciences help you do your work? I think we probably have answered how wonderful the Masters in Global Mental Health work has helped you. And Aludeo says, is it only support work one can do with a degree? But again, I think have we answered that?
Yeah, certainly not the case. There's a range of other roles, even outside of service delivery, as we have discussed, that you could do with a degree, such as work in policy, work in advocacy, in capacity building, in intervention evaluation, and other roles as well.
Right. I think that's all today. I think we've come away with some great top tips and some takeaways. So I just want, as time's progressing, we've got 3 more minutes left. I just want to thank you all. I really do want to thank you all for a really great session today. I appreciate your time and appreciate you sharing some wisdoms. And also I want to thank Dimitar for gathering these 4 panelists in the first place. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for inspirational session, everyone. Thank you.